Did you know there are 15-foot long sharks cruising around the south end of the island?
Now I'm not ever going swimming out there again.
But they are incredibly deep. They live down really deep, and it deeper than scuba.
Okay.
Traditionally goes.
Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 116 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with an expedition manager for OceanGate Expeditions. Please welcome Kyle Bingham. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. Thank you again for just continue to listen to the podcast. I enjoy putting this out here and talking with different people. And so today, I get to speak with Kyle Bingham, who is the expedition manager for OceanGate Expeditions. And this was a podcast that we talked a lot about following your passion, but not in a way of like, just follow your passion and hope that it works out, but really being aware of the possibilities that are out there right now as far as ways to make an income, doing what you love. Now, everyone doesn't have to work a job that they absolutely love, but just not settling and making sure you do check out all the options out there. Kyle has had a wide range of different jobs that he's worked and different things that he's put together, and just following his passions and the things that he enjoys doing. Part of that was doing expeditions with people, more like a private expedition company. And now with OceanGate, he gets to explore the ocean. We talk about it being kind of, another world down there. And so, I think this was a really encouraging podcast. If you're into adventure and that, Kyle has had some amazing experiences. But if you're also just kind of looking for, pick me up of like, what is there out there? Hopefully this encourages you a little bit in just getting out there and seeing what's out there. And maybe there's some opportunities that you didn't know existed. So I got a lot out of this podcast, really enjoyed it. So I know you will too. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Kyle Bingham. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the expedition manager for OceanGate Expeditions. Welcome to the podcast, Kyle Bingham.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did I pronounce the last name right?
You got it. Bingham.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Didn't double check beforehand. So, all right. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about Kyle.
I think the biggest thing could say, a life of adventure is really kind of tried to summarize myself that way. Grew up locally in the area. Been living on the island for a little over 11 years now. Okay. Try and travel the world and inspire other people to get out there and explore and lead by example, both in adventure and being a husband and a father. Nice.
Very cool. How many kids do you have?
2.
Okay. Nice. All right. So you said you've been in the area, but where did you grow up?
I grew up in Marysville.
Okay.
Yeah, so not far away.
Nice.
But grew up in Marysville my whole life. Went to Marysville Pilchuck High School, graduated, went to college, moved away for a little while, I think as many of us do, and then ended up coming back to the Northwest.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice. Where did you end up going to college?
I actually went to a firefighting program through Everett Community College.
Okay.
I got a degree in firefighting and pursued that for a while.
Okay.
And then moved to California, kind of continued that pathway and got into travel and adventure, and the rest is history.
Nice. So with firefighting, were you looking at doing like forest firefighting, or were you looking at more city?
More city.
Okay.
Yeah. Residential firefighting. Yeah. I still work as a volunteer so.
Okay.
Still a little bit in the loop there.
Yeah. So what was it how did that kind of happen then? So you went to school for firefighting, you moved to California. Did you move there for a job opportunity then?
Just for the adventure, I guess. So in high school, I did some study abroad stuff. Got to go to Europe. Explored a lot of Europe during high school. And kind of got the travel bug there.
Okay.
My dad, our family traveled a lot when we were younger. And, it's just hard to sit still a little bit.
Yeah.
And moved to California, looked at firefighting down there, and continued to travel and carve that path out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where in Europe did you travel when you were in high school?
England, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Italy,
Wow.
quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were those like multiple like little trips, or was it one big trip that you kind of hit a bunch of these countries?
One big trip.
Okay.
Yeah, hit a bunch of different countries, museums and churches and all those sightseeing things, and it was a big educational trip. So there's a lot of study stuff too, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. All right. So then you were in California looking at kind of fireman stuff. What kind of happened from there then?
So just continued to travel, and climbing was my big passion. So getting out, doing climbs, and a big part of what I try and do from kind of the travel adventure side of things is pair that with some kind of give back somehow.
Okay.
Whether it's partner with a charity or a cause and get out and travel. And that kind of drove me to one of my bigger first climbs was Mount Kilimanjaro in 2012.
Okay.
So,
wow. So prior to that, then, had you been doing like smaller mountains like in the Northwest? Or?
Yep. The first climb I did was when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
I climbed Mount St. Helens with my dad.
Okay.
He was a climber, adventurer guy too, so I blame a lot of this wanderlust on him. But that was kind of my big first real climb, and climbed all the Washington volcanoes and a lot of climbing in between. We had a cabin up in the Cascades here. Spent a lot of summers, running around the hills of the Cascades. So
Okay.
yeah, a lot of climbs in between. So
nice. What was that like? Because I've got 4 kids, and I've got 2 10-year-old daughters and then an 8-year-old son and a 5-year-old. I'm just kind of trying to imagine, even like my daughters who are 10, trying to get them to climb anything that large. Like we've done hikes and stuff, but like, what was that like for you as a kid?
From my perspective or my father's perspective, I think there's two different. He says it was a near mutiny, but I remember it more as a pretty big adventure. I mean, it's challenging for sure. And what's really neat is in August, my son turned 9, and my father, myself, and my son climbed Mount St. Helens. So he did it just as I did 9 years old. And if you ask my dad, he did it much better style than I did. Didn't complain much. Made it to the top. Made it back. Energy to spare. But yeah, I mean, it's a big climb. It's challenging. It's exhausting, but I don't think it's out of the reach. I mean, a lot of people, I think, perceive some of these climbs, these adventures, as these grand, big things that are unobtainable or outside of their box.
Yeah.
When you get introduced to it or you approach it, you get educated about what the adventure is or what the climb is, and learn the skills that it takes to get you there.
Yeah.
Little climbs in between or getting your feet used to it, understanding what you're getting into. Much more of it is possible than people think.
Yeah. So as far as like with your kids then, how have you just from a very young age, have they been doing hikes and things like that?
Yeah. We have a climbing wall in our garage.
Okay.
We've always tried to get them outside. We do a lot of camping, a lot of hiking, and follow their lead too. I mean, nothing's forced.
Yeah.
But, getting outside and playing outside, a little less screen time, and enjoying the aspects of the outdoors, looking at birds and bugs and geocaching, things like that.
Yeah.
That encourage you to get outside and make it fun.
Nice. Yeah. My daughter is right now obsessed with beetles, and so that's been her thing.
That's great. And then, go beetle hunting and learn about beetles and go look for them and get out and find new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. What are some, this is kind of just going off, what are some like trails in this area that you really suggest for kids and stuff to get out, whether that's up the Cascades or in this area?
Well, we've got here on the island 2 state parks that have great trails. There's some other trails like Ivy Way here on the island. There's a short trail that goes down to Cama Beach.
Okay.
But kind of finding those in-between spots. Iverson, of course, English Boom, the parks we have, just getting out and exploring. Geocaching, as I mentioned, is a great way to explore the parks in new ways.
Okay.
Go treasure hunting, essentially. I mean, that's a fun way to do it.
Nice.
And then not far from here, Mount Loop Highway is kind of where our cabin was.
Okay.
Up out of Granite Falls. There's great hiking up there. And I think a fun little obtainable goal for people is Mount Pilchuck.
Okay.
We took my son up there the first time, I think, when he was 5, and actually proposed to my wife on the summit of Mount Pilchuck. So, cool. But it's a neat one because you can see it here from the island, and you can look back when you get up there. But that's a great one for families to make a summer goal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, so then you went over, you got this whole plan to go climb Kilimanjaro. What was that what did that process kind of look like?
Well, the first climb, I've climbed Kilimanjaro a couple times. And the first time was with the Cancer Climber Association out of Colorado.
Okay.
So that was a more charitable aspect of that. So the build up to that, training and doing a lot of local climbs here, and that was kind of a bigger personal project to climb some of the biggest mountains in the world. But Kilimanjaro was kind of the first ones of that. But my father had climbed Kilimanjaro in years past, and I think I was probably in my early teens when he did it, and that was to me, outer space. My dad climbed Kilimanjaro. What can't I do? And I hope that's kind of what I show my kids. But really just understanding that it's possible, and it's one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. So how was that different than what you had done previous when you climbed it the first time?
That climb of Kilimanjaro, based compared to other climbs previous to that.
Yeah, because you said you had done you did Mount St. Helens, and then you'd climb some smaller peaks in the Northwest.
Well, when you get to these bigger climbs and you travel for a ways,
right?
Financially, there's a little bit of investment there.
Yeah.
You're flying to the other side of the world, and you're hoping that everything goes right, and you feel good. So there's a level of anxiety that's not. We drove to 3 hours south in Washington and didn't feel good. Where the weather was poor, and we're going to head back home.
Right.
You're invested a lot in these, and sometimes that's something to think about. You put the success really high on a pedestal. We got to get to the summit. I've gone so far. I've spent so much. And trying to take a step back from that and say, it might not be in the cards. And that's adventure.
Yeah.
It's the journey. It's not always the destination. Or there's nothing up there. You get to the top of these mountains, there's nothing there. It's a great view, hopefully.
Yeah.
You have to prepare yourself physically, but mentally a little bit different.
Yeah. I didn't think about that because, I think when you're planning trips or things like that, if you're planning like a certain trip like Disneyland or something like that, you're going to get to go. It's just going to happen.
It'll be there.
Yeah. But, if you're doing something that's a little bit bigger and there's a lot more factors involved of whether or not it's safe and all these different aspects like that does make a lot more difficult and a little bit stressful because you're kind of worrying about that the whole trip. At least I would be.
Yeah, and that's where I think the more you get out there and explore it, you take a step back and look at the journey. And you look at the process that it takes to get there, the preparation, and enjoy that. Mm-hmm. Enjoy the travel. If it's Africa, enjoy the travel to Africa and the distance you're going and thinking about where you are in the world and landing there on the ground and the sights and smells. Taking all that in as part of the value of the climb or the experience.
Yeah.
Not putting that, I just got to get to the top summit fever out front, but enjoy that 90% of everything else. Because even when you get to the top, you're there for, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, and you head back down.
Yeah.
But enjoying that whole process as well.
Yeah.
In the journey for the adventure.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you've been able to personally kind of help yourself stay in that moment and instead of just going for that end goal?
Slow down. Everything, you get excited about travel or you're getting out there, but taking the time to just think about your sights and smells and senses, even when you're sitting in the airport, close your eyes and take in, what it smells like, just taking those kind of personal, I almost call them like photographs or internal pictures of that moment.
Yeah.
But not being rushed ahead that, we got to get to this destination or we got to get down this road to the waterfall because we got to take pictures that we saw on Instagram. What about everything else along the way on that dirt road or the birds or the sounds along the way? So taking the time to slow down in those experiences.
Yeah. That's very cool. So on that first climb then, how was it? Did you guys end up getting there and the weather was all right?
Yeah, it all worked out. It's a tough climb, and the weather was great. Everybody was healthy and happy. We all made it. Almost all of us made it to the top.
Okay.
Which is typical. It's a difficult trip. There's a lot of anxiety that gets built into that. I think that's what slows people down too.
Okay.
It was a great trip, successful.
Nice.
And I did it again 3 years later.
Okay.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
What is it, do you think, that why certain people are able to make it, some aren't? Do you think from a skill perspective that everyone that started that climb had the ability to finish it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, some climbs, some mountains, there's skill involved. And you need to be prepared because you're going to endanger yourself and you can endanger other people.
Right.
But some of these are more treks. It's a long walk up high. And I think a lot of it is the psychological part. It's going into areas that are unknown. It's not necessarily like unmapped, but in your own mind, unknown challenges and outside of the box experiences that I think slow people down. And I had a friend, we climbed South Sister in Oregon.
Okay.
And we got near the top, and he just didn't think he had the energy to do it. And it's understanding how much fuel you have in the tank.
Yeah.
And I summited, came back and met him, and we kind of took a long route back down. But when we got back to the car, it was evident that he had enough energy to have done it, but he just hadn't been in that place, within himself to know how much gas he had left. So I think that slows a lot of people down, just the mental aspect.
Yeah.
I think it's too hard.
Right.
But when you get out there and you push yourself, you'd be surprised how much farther you can go than you think you can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool. So after you summited that, what was kind of your next path that you decided to do? Because you decided not to do the fireman path. Mm-hmm. You're here, kind of, I guess, if you're on your way back, flying back, what was kind of going through your head at that point then?
So that climb really sparked for me how to get people out and explore. A short story within that climb, we had gone to a hotel after the climb. It's called the Highview Hotel. And we went by this little orphanage down at the bottom of the hill. And there was kids outside waving and stuff. And, they don't have a whole lot. And their clothes were pretty, minimal. And we got up to the Highview Hotel and got hot towels. It's marble floor. The Sounders game was on satellite. We had Kilimanjaro beer and watched the Sounders game on satellite. And said, hey, tomorrow, we asked our guide, can we go down to that orphanage and just visit? And he said, oh, no, you can't. So that's an AIDS orphanage. Those children's parents have died, and they probably are sick too. So we're sitting there drinking beer and watching the Sounders on satellite while these kids have not a whole lot of future. So that really stuck with me. And then coming back from that first trip, I thought about how can anybody do more to help? Mm-hmm. And it started this whole kind of, we ended up making, me and a couple friends started manufacturing and making flip-flops. Okay. And the idea was to sell these flip-flops and donate a portion of it to charity. Okay. And a model that's been done before, but being able to get in on that or have a hand in that felt good. And it worked for a little while, and we sold some flip-flops. But really, the purpose, the goal was to get, if you could have got somebody there, if I could have taken somebody by the hand and had them experience that same thing, see those kids, look in their eyes, and see the contrast between the two, that's really what I wanted to try and do. Introduce people to adventure, introduce people to other parts of the world, that they come back, and it didn't mean they have to, see somebody in a poor country and sell everything they have and live in a dung hut. Yeah. But be a little more understanding of the world, be nicer to your neighbor, be a little more generous, give back a little bit more. And that's where the travel part kind of came in. It wasn't about flip-flops. It's about getting people out there and seeing things and learning about themselves, challenging themselves, and coming back and hopefully being a little better human. Yeah. That's where the travel part really kind of kicked off. And then it was, all right, well, how do we get people out there? How do I go on adventures, make a little living, and introduce the world to people? And actually started an adventure travel company out of that. Okay. That I ran for 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then upon getting that started then, so when you came back then, was that what you jumped right into then? Was that?
It was pretty immediate, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that getting that started for you? Had you had any business experience or anything?
Yeah, so at the time I had also worked for a company called Quicksilver.
Okay.
So I originally started with Quicksilver when I lived in California. This was after college. And I worked some in the marketing in Huntington Beach and also managed some of the retail stores. So I had connections kind of in the manufacturing side of things. And flip-flops are one of their key products.
Yeah.
So really understanding the business side of things, had some good partners and some good friends help out from the manufacturing and design of the flip-flops and putting those pieces together and having them both designed, made, marketed, and produced and sold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And did you guys just sell them online, or did you sell them through retail stores?
Primarily online.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. So doing all that we could to cut out the middleman as well. And, the more margin you had, the more you could give away.
Right.
Yeah.
So then when you guys kind of shut that down, when did you start your adventure business then?
It was probably 2 or 3 years later.
Okay.
The flip-flop model, it was difficult to kind of manage the giving aspect of the business without growing out of that to maintain the purpose,
Yeah.
but still generate enough revenue or scale it up enough
Yeah.
for it to really make sense.
Yep.
And then that's when we just kind of looked back at, what are we really trying to accomplish here?
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting people out there. It wasn't the flip-flop part. If you could sell 100 flip-flops and influence one person, what if you just took that one person out there and showed it to them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So then when you were getting this started then, the adventure business, how did you kind of get started in that then?
So I had connections around the world. Some through my father from climbing, others just through partners and friends of trips that I had done.
Okay.
And really just started putting the pieces together of what would it take to build out an adventure travel company and lead trips.
Okay.
And making connections and going out. We did several trips in Guatemala to some of the volcanoes down there.
Okay.
Going out and doing the trips myself, being able to understand what it took, what the experience is like, and then come back and introduce that to people and say, hey, we're putting a trip together. And it started small, and partnered with another travel company to build off of their trips a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just really hit the ground running, go out, explore, find unique places, come back home, put a package together, and then take people out and show them.
Okay. And did you just reach out to like friends and family, or did you have people reaching out to you then?
Friends and family is really how it started.
Okay.
Did a lot of talks and just introduced people to the concepts and grew it from there.
Okay.
But started definitely small, convince a few family friends, to let me put a trip together for them.
Yeah.
Take them back to Kilimanjaro and grow it from there.
Okay.
And then, been to ever Space Camp and trips in Guatemala and
Nice.
So.
Very cool. I got to spend some time in Guatemala. We stayed, we were doing a business venture down there. And so I kind of traveled a ways around it, but we spent a couple weeks in Antigua, Guatemala.
Yeah.
And that was just a beautiful city just to walk around and just kind of live in their culture for a little bit.
Yeah, it's really, and you have the volcanoes right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in fact, one of them erupted while we were down. I mean, mini eruption, but we got to see the lava. Like we saw this little like red stream start going down. It was really cool.
So one of the climbs we would do is Acatenango, which
Okay.
is right there outside of Antigua, and its neighbor is Fuego.
Okay.
Volcan
Yes.
Fuego, yeah. And you climb Acatenango, which is 10,000, a little over 10,000 feet, I think, maybe a
Okay.
little more than that. Yeah, and you watch Volcan Fuego erupt during the night.
Wow.
Yeah, it's right there, and it's an incredible experience.
Yeah.
But a really neat place. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the coffee, great coffee there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So, so then you started doing all of this then, and then did you say you stopped doing that then?
I do a little bit
Okay.
of organization for trips and stuff now, but primarily I'm at OceanGate. And
Okay.
That's the main focus.
Cool. So in all of that then, how did you kind of end up getting tied in? Well, I guess actually before we jump into OceanGate,
Mm-hmm.
in all of your trips and stuff like that, what were your favorite places that you got to go to and that you suggest people go visit?
Nepal,
Okay.
in the Himalayas, of course, that's got to be high on the list. So much history there. The big mountains, the culture, the people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's what drives a lot of it for me is the people.
Yeah.
And then Africa, Kenya, Tanzania. The people drive a lot of it. And amazing, beautiful places. But if you can see these amazing places with amazing people that are proud of their country, proud of the area, want to show you the best stuff around.
Mm-hmm.
Finding good partners that way. I think that as you travel, you got to be aware and be conscious of, a lot of the people are looking for opportunity, and it's not always good opportunity to take advantage of things. But if you connect with the right groups, like for Kilimanjaro, for example, there's a group out there called the KPAP, Kilimanjaro Porter Association Program.
Okay.
And they help to protect the porters, so they get paid. It's kind of a union, I guess.
Okay.
But looking at the trekking organizations that are KPAP certified, so the KPAP group will go in and say, what are you paying the guides? What are you paying the porters? What's the fair treatment? Those kinds of things. And just being educated before you travel helps a lot of that. But in Nepal, I think if I had to put on a list, Kilimanjaro, both tangible things for most people to go. You could trek to Everest Base Camp and have an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
You could go climb Kilimanjaro and check off one of the world's highest, or one of the 7 summits.
Yeah.
Those two.
Nice. Very cool. So then, in all of this, then, how did you end up getting tied in with OceanGate Expeditions? And then maybe do kind of a explainer of what OceanGate Expeditions is.
Yeah, absolutely. So amongst all this travel, always looking for new, unique places to go. The space market, that whole landscape is opening, and so is the underwater world. So exploring underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably 3 years ago. Got a notification. I think it was like one of the, like Indeed or LinkedIn. This job, might be interesting to you.
Mm-hmm.
And really started looking at these underwater exploration companies. And one popped up called OceanGate Expeditions. Just so happens it's in Everett.
Okay.
So we're at the port of Everett, and I connected with them. Chatted for quite a while, a couple months, about what I did from the adventure travel side, what they needed, what their goals were, and came home as the expedition manager.
Okay.
Yeah. So OceanGate Expeditions, we own and operate 3-man submersibles.
Okay.
So these are, people go inside. Each one, you take 5 people. And the submersibles range in depth from around 1,000 feet to, 4,000 meters, which is almost 13,000 feet.
Wow.
Our deep diving sub.
Wow. Okay.
So we use the subs for a few different ways, or for a few different reasons. For education, for research, we do have some government industrial contracts. And then now we've kind of segmented off these adventure travel aspects.
Okay.
So we call them mission specialists, but they're paying positions, or people pay for a mission specialist position. They can join the expedition
Okay.
as a member of the crew, an active member of the crew, and go on expeditions with us, and go, as we did, down to the Titanic.
Okay.
And see these things underwater for yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. So with that, then, what was, how did the Titanic become one of your guys' focus and planned?
People know it.
Yeah.
Our goals at OceanGate are much bigger than just the Titanic, but that's a big thing that people know. I mean, the Titanic story has touched all of us in some way, whether it's from the movie or, knowing something or somehow, or somebody's just generally interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
We all kind of know it. And as a kind of a big stepping stone for us, OceanGate started in 2009, exploring a lot of different areas. But the Titanic kind of as a big kickoff point, a big expedition for these deep dives. A lot of people know it. There's great research down there. A lot of neat things to see from the archaeological standpoint, biological standpoint, human history. So it's just a great dive if you have the sub to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, how was it when you first started doing the dives and stuff like that?
When I first got introduced, my first dive was when, just a couple months after I started in OceanGate. And it's an interesting experience. I mean, the first one, it's much calmer, safer, relaxing than you'd expect.
Okay.
It's quiet, it's smooth, but there's a little bit of apprehension. And that's a little bit we talked about before with climbs. It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
It's outside the box. How am I going to react? What's it going to be like?
Mm-hmm.
And getting introduced to that and kind of putting yourself in those positions, you'd be surprised that it's not as daunting, scary as you'd think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dive experiences are truly amazing. You get transported to a different world.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of diving out here in the Puget Sound.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of dives kind of between Hat Island and Camano.
Okay.
But it's amazing how you can go, head out, get in a sub, go down several hundred feet, explore a whole different part of the planet, come back to the surface and, go have lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not unlike scuba diving in some ways, being introduced to that world. But the subs, there's no decompression.
Oh, there's not. Okay.
It's warm.
That's nice.
It's inviting. You don't get wet. You can experience that with other people.
Mm-hmm.
You can sit in there and talk and point. We have oftentimes researchers or interpreters come and show you, what you're seeing and how it fits in the ecosystem, which is funner than scuba diving and, mumbling to your buddy and poking and prodding.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. No, that was something I was kind of wondering about, especially with some of the deeper dives, is that decompression and all that stuff. And
inside the sub, it's 1 atmosphere. So the pressure chamber of the hull of the sub is strong enough to withstand the outside pressure.
Okay.
So nothing changes inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also scrub the atmosphere of carbon dioxide. So
Okay.
we have a scrubbing material and we add a little bit of oxygen. It's the same stuff that they would use on the space shuttle.
Okay.
Or in space.
Okay.
So you just clean the atmosphere, so we don't have compressed air, no scuba tanks. We just clean the air.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. So for the Titanic then, what was that like? One, I guess, getting prepped for it and everything. And I guess locationally wise, where, like, I guess exactly is
Where
that?
is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's really deep underwater.
Right.
But it's also about 380 miles south of St. John's, Newfoundland.
Okay.
So if you think about kind of that northeastern corner of Canada, and then Boston, if you were to draw 2 lines intersecting on a map from Boston over and St. John's, it's right about there. So it's off of the Grand Banks, or there's kind of that continental shelf there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then when you guys did this, what was that? I guess what was the prep for it? And then what was it like doing the actual expedition?
So the prep has been years in preparation. OceanGate's Titanic plan started back in 2000 and, well, really early on. I mean, really started prepping for it in 2017.
Okay.
The development, the testing of the submersible is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Our sub is very unique. This is the deep diving sub. It's called Titan.
Okay.
It was developed in partnership with aerospace companies as well as NASA. It was manufactured the pressure hull. So this is kind of like, imagine a paper towel tube, really big one. It's 5-inch thick carbon fiber.
Wow. Okay.
It's one of the largest carbon fiber pressure vessels ever made.
Yeah.
And it was manufactured here locally. We've got great aerospace resources here with Boeing.
Yeah.
And then the end caps, imagine 2 hemispheres, 2 halves of circles.
Yeah.
Stuck on there. Those are 3¼ inch titanium.
Okay.
So this pressure hull and this carbon fiber composite submersible is very, very unique as well.
Okay.
So it's been a long road of development and testing. Building pressure hulls, testing scale models, working with the Applied Physics Lab at the University of Washington on developing some of this.
Yeah.
We spent a year and a half in the Bahamas testing the pressure hull and the sub in its full configuration in the deep waters of the Bahamas.
Yeah.
So it's a long process, long road. Even taking the sub to the Deep Ocean Test Facility is what it's called in Annapolis, Maryland, shipping it out there.
Okay.
Putting it in an above-ground pressure chamber.
Okay.
To make sure that the hull is strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a long, long process and long build-up from that engineering aspect.
Oh, okay.
From the preparations from the people side, the mission specialists, as I mentioned, paying guests that help underwrite the expedition and join.
Yeah.
Getting everybody on board. That was the kind of an early adopter group, but getting them all ready to go, and then heading out on this expedition this last summer, and we spent 5 weeks.
Okay.
Out in the North Atlantic exploring.
Yeah. So do you guys travel in the sub out there, or is that?
So everything goes on trucks.
Okay.
So it's all built and configured to go on the back of a semi or multiple semis.
Okay.
That we can travel and ship it overland.
Yep. So then once you guys get to the actual location then, is that when everyone loads up into the, like, is it taken, I guess, out towards that area? Is it then on a boat and then gets launched?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody meets in St. John's, and we have a 300-foot long, 80-foot wide, 8,000-ton offshore support vessel.
Okay.
And that's our hotel and work platform while we're out there. And the sub gets loaded on the back of this big ship. It's like a big pickup truck in the ocean.
Yeah.
And we load up everybody. It's great accommodations. It's very comfortable. It's it's not quite a cruise line, but for this work that we do, it's pretty much a 4-star resort out there. There's a gym, great food. It's really comfortable.
Nice.
And we head out to the dive site, and the sub launches off of the back of the ship on a ramp. Essentially, if you imagine this paper towel tube and hemispheres I talked about before, sitting on top of a floating barge.
Yep.
We launch the barge and the sub off of the ship.
Okay.
And it floats back, 100 meters off the back of the ship. And then the barge and the sub both sink together. And they sink down about 100 feet. And under the water at 100 feet, the sub disconnects from the barge.
Okay.
And the sub heads down with people in it to go do the expedition or explore or whatever that mission might be.
Yeah.
And then when it's done, it comes back. It lands back on this underwater barge. The barge underwater fills back with pressurized air, and it comes back to the surface.
Weird. Wow. That's crazy.
So it's a patented way to launch the sub. But what it does is the water's pretty calm underwater, especially 100 feet down. So if you have rough seas or the waves, things are rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
if you've ever been scuba diving, when you're on the dive boat and you're rocking and rolling, you dive underwater, and now all of a sudden everything's mellow.
Okay.
There's not much movement under there, and that's where we can mate the platform and the sub together.
Yeah.
We bring it back to the surface, and then it comes back on the back of the ship.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, my background's engineering. In fact, I worked with a company that their primary focus was carbon fiber. They did tools for Boeing and stuff like that. And so I'm trying to imagine, like, when you said 5 inches of carbon fiber, I'm like, that's so many layers of, over and over. So, but yeah, then from an engineering perspective, like creating that whole launch platform of like getting it from the boat off the barge and then sinking that and then like that's quite the feat.
Yeah, there's a little bit going on there.
Yeah.
We try and simplify the systems or make them as redundant as you can. Because they can get overcomplicated really quickly.
Yeah.
But we look at these intersections of risk. Where is somebody going to get hurt, and what can we do to mitigate that? On the surface, you got a lot moving around, rocking and rolling. How would you mitigate that? Well, underwater seems pretty calm. Let's head there and see if you can make that work in a safe way. Once you're in the sub, you're locked in the sub.
Yep.
The deep diving sub Titan, the front dome is actually bolted shut.
Okay.
So you're in a container essentially. It's not claustrophobic. It's actually really welcoming, but you're safe. You're in a safe space there. So you remove some of those intersections.
Yeah.
So if you can put people in the sub on the boat,
Yep.
launch them off, they head down, and then get them back out on the boat, really you've eliminated a lot of that risk.
Yeah.
Floating around and bopping on the sea.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. How big is how many people can the Titan hold?
5.
5. Okay,
Yep.
so it's also 5.
Yep. So we've got a pilot, a co-pilot, and then 3 either mission specialists or researchers or scientists will go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then, were you in that first run then?
So I've been in Titan several times here in Puget Sound and also in the Bahamas, but I did not get the chance to go to the Titanic.
Okay.
This year. So the priority was the mission specialists, as well as the researchers, and then getting our pilots time down there on the wreck. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So then, you guys have another one planned though coming up here, right?
Yeah. So we'll be going back to the Titanic every year.
Okay.
Next one will begin next year in May. I think this is the 16th of May.
Okay.
We'll kick back off from St. John's and finish June 30th.
Okay.
But there's a lot. I mean, we've just kind of cracked the can open there. There's a lot to see on the Titanic itself.
Yeah.
And a lot of interest and a lot of opportunity for more people to go down, see the Titanic in person, be part of the expedition, contribute to research. But we'll be heading back there every summer. Okay. Until there's nothing left to see.
Nice. Cool. So then, for you then, what are kind of your things that you're doing within the company right now then?
So I manage a lot of the expedition side. So we have the manufacturing, we have the engineering and the operations. And then the expedition side is the client management part. The mission specialists. So we don't just let anybody join. There's a cost to join. But we want to make sure the people that join really are cohesive with the team. Yep. Their expectations are in line with ours. So I do a lot of the client vetting, that kind of, I guess, the sales side of things. And then when we're out at sea, making sure that everybody is getting what they expect and making sure everybody's happy. And I work closely with the expedition director from the everyday operations side of things. Okay. So I oversee a lot of the kind of the high level stuff as well as the safety side of things. My firefighting EMT background folds in there. So I'm kind of the safety on board as well. Okay. Nice. Yeah. So we all wear many hats.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. As in many smaller businesses.
Yes.
Yes. Very cool. How big is the team at OceanGate?
There's 17 of us.
Okay. So yeah, still pretty small then.
Pretty small. Yeah. We do use a lot of contractors. So from the engineering side of things, but it doesn't take a whole lot of personnel to actually, I mean, there's some people power involved. Yeah. But it doesn't take a huge team to actually execute the expeditions.
Okay. Nice. How often do you get to go do dives in like Puget Sound and stuff like that?
Years past, this has been a little bit different with COVID and all that stuff, but
Right.
We try and dive weekly. And
Oh, wow.
in
Okay.
years past, I think the team's diving one of our subs tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, so the dives happen pretty regularly.
Okay. So on those smaller dives, are those open to the research people as well? And are they able to pay in and do those?
Yeah, there's still opportunity for guests, mission specialists, civilian scientists to join.
Yep.
Every aspect or every dive we do, there's a scientific aspect to it.
Okay.
We maybe go monitor something, document observations, go look at something specific. Some of our partners, are looking for certain things in Puget Sound, whether it's Seattle Aquarium, who may be interested in 6-gill sharks, and we report back to them if we saw one.
Okay.
We've always got our eye out for those. I don't know if you're familiar with 6-gill
No,
sharks.
I'm not.
We've got some big sharks in Puget Sound.
Okay.
They're pretty deep. They're really mellow. They're rarely seen because they live so deep, but they're called 6-gill sharks. And they can be 15 feet long.
Wow.
Yeah, right out here. Did you know they're 15-foot long sharks cruising around the south end of the island?
Now I'm not ever going swimming out there again.
But they are incredibly deep. They live down really deep, and it deeper than scuba. Traditionally goes. There were a lot of sightings back in the early 2000s down in Seattle.
Okay.
They think it was down in that area was kind of a nursery for these sharks, and there was kind of a boom in population or people seeing them. It's died down a lot these years, which scientists don't really know why.
Okay.
But 6-gill sharks, they are out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I've always been somewhat worried about swimming in the ocean to begin with. And every time I hear more things, I used to watch Discovery Channel a lot. I think that's why I don't like swimming in the ocean is they would always do those shots where they start high and then they do the submersed dive.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, and then when you get to this level, there's all these things. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to swim in the ocean anymore.
Well, if you're inside a submersible, they can't get to you.
Right. That's a little bit different. My friend does scuba diving, which I'm like, I'm still not ready for that.
Always looking over your shoulder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very cool, though.
Yeah.
I do think it's fascinating. I think especially watching some of those when they talk about the things and they show it's like a different world. You're like an alien world.
It absolutely is. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I try and convey is it is an alien world. There is so much we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably heard that before. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about our own ocean.
Yeah.
And I think people just take it for granted. You look out at a beautiful sunset over the water here from the island.
Yeah.
And it looks great, but what goes on underneath those waves?
Yeah.
And access to that, and unless you're scuba dive certified and go through some of the courses, but even deep under the water, access to that has been reserved traditionally for universities, for governments that have these deep diving subs, and that's where we're kind of trying to carve some of this out to get more people, civilian scientists, people interested in the ocean, down deep, and see what's down there. And it's a strange, wild world that we know very little about.
Yeah.
We'll go on dives and you'll see stuff that nobody has a clue what it is. That is common to see something, and it might be the first time a human has ever seen it, or a species that we've never identified.
Right.
That is a true, easy possibility.
Yeah.
On each of these dives.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So then you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast you just did the climb of Mount St. Helens with your son.
Mm-hmm.
So even with this, you're still going out and doing adventures, or at least locally. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spending almost 2 months in total, I guess, out there on the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Climbing a mountain sounded like a really good idea to get. And that's a strange contrast too. When you're out in the middle of the North Atlantic, you're on the surface and there's not much to see.
Yeah.
It was really neat. We were in the Gulf Stream there. The water temperature was around 80 degrees.
Okay.
We caught mahi off of the boat.
Nice.
But, missing the trees, missing the mountains, having that void, because that was something that's where I, grew up and came from. Getting back and climbing was nice. And then taking my son for his 9th birthday, kind of similar that I did years ago.
That's great. And so when you do some of these trips and stuff like that, you're gone for a good chunk of time then, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it communication all right? Like easy to get back and forth with kids and family?
Yeah, I mean, as much as you're being remote and being away from home for a while, it is a bummer.
Yeah.
But I think, and from a technology standpoint, things are getting easier.
Yeah.
We have satellite on the boat. We can do FaceTime.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
You have a difference in time, but you can stay connected that way. And the more, the world's changing with, satellite networks and Wi-Fi, it's easier to stay connected.
Yeah.
But even when I'm not home, which is a bummer, my hope is that by doing these things and leading and showing my kids what's possible out there.
Yeah.
That kind of feels that you can, how much of a father figure, in a big sense, I guess this is personally, do I have on the day to day versus doing these big adventures and my kids saying, oh yeah, my dad went on a Titanic expedition or went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. What can't I do?
Yeah.
So just trying to keep that door open or introduce them to a bigger world.
Yeah.
Which means sometimes you're not home for bedtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And then do you have any big trips that you have planned out right now?
We're from OceanGate standpoint, we'll be traveling a bunch this winter. We're taking Titan, our deep diving submersible, on a roadshow tour.
Okay.
So we're actually taking it on it'll go on the back of a semi. We're going to hit a few major cities along the way. We're bringing it back here eventually to Everett.
Okay.
To get prepared for next year's expedition, but we're going to do some stops. First one is next month in Rhode Island, in Connecticut. We'll be headed to the Detroit area, Atlanta, Scottsdale, Palm Springs, back up here to Seattle. So we've got trips that way, kind of from a business standpoint, planned. Personally, that's probably going to consume a lot of my time. We'll try and sneak out for some climbs in the spring before heading back out to the Titanic again. Okay. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid-fire questions.
Sure.
So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
I got a new Bluetooth speaker.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's kind of like one of those Bluetooth boombox ones.
Yes.
And almost every night when the sky is a little bit clear, we'll sit on our front porch. We look to the west, and we turn music on, me and my kids, and we sit, blankets wrapped up. And the challenge is who can spot the first star. Okay. And you get $1 if you see the first star. So there's an incentive there.
Yes.
So we're starting the business thing early. But yeah, the speaker, we put some tunes on, sit with the kids, and watch for that first star to show up. Nice. And I think that, for me right now, after having come back from a long trip, is probably one of my best purchases in the last couple months.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town. What would their first day look like here?
On the island, state parks.
Yeah.
All the parks, I guess.
Yeah.
I do a little tour, start on the north end, and check out the parks. Come here, explore local goods on the marketplace, and head down to the state parks to Cama and Camano.
Nice. Yeah,
and just try and get out on some trails and enjoy the nature, and I guess that kind of slow community we have here, and slow down for a few. Yeah, no, it's definitely a special part about Camano is that you kind of get to escape everything else and just be in nature and be kind of where, the island life. Yeah, the hustle and bustle kind of goes away. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. All right. Who's an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next? So I saw this question and gave it some thought. Terry Swarner. Okay. I want to put her out there. Yeah. So she lives here on the island. Terry Swarner is an amazing woman, and her son is Sean Swarner. Yeah. And are you familiar with? So I've had their name suggested before. But keep going. Okay, perfect. Sean Swarner is who I climbed with in 2012 on Kilimanjaro for the first time. Really? Okay. Yeah. So he runs the Cancer Climber Association. They climb Kilimanjaro every year. He lives in Colorado, but he's often out here. Okay. Travels quite a bit. I've actually climbed, the second time I climbed Kilimanjaro, I ran into him on the summit. Okay. But we had become friends since then and catch up with each other when he's in town, climbed Rainier with him. Okay. In the wintertime, but it's an amazing story. I don't want to give too much of his story away, but he's a 2-time cancer survivor, climbed all 7 summits, went to both poles, did it all with one lung. His mom's amazing. She lives here on the island, and their whole family story is fascinating. Very cool. Yeah. All right. And lastly, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self? Follow your heart. Follow your interests, do what you love to do, and then figure out a way to monetize it. Yeah. So follow your passion. Don't just follow what the world or society says you should do, but what interests you. Hopefully that helps the world in a good way. Yeah. But follow your heart and follow what you're trying to do, and then second to that, figure out a way to make the money you need to make out of it. Yeah. because
Yeah.
the world's changing now, and it'll be changing in years. And if I could go back and tell myself, or have that confidence that, just to follow your heart and, get on things earlier, I hope I would have been in this position a few years ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I think that's really neat. I think there's so many opportunities out there now.
Yeah.
I hope it's inspiring for people who listen to this podcast, just kind of seeing what's out there, and you can kind of make a living and do what you love all in the same place.
Yeah. Just get creative, and talk to people, look for resources, and you can pull some pretty incredible things together.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Well, I thank you for your time, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Kyle Bingham for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast. That's CamanoCommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.